But I'm really excited today because I have someone, obviously, a lot of the people that I know are in that CFO space or CFO roles. And I'm actually really excited to have someone that is in the CFO role for a company that's in the cannabis industry and to get his perspective on some of the questions that I personally have. So, Michael, welcome.
Hi, Manny. Thanks for having me.
To start it off, how about you just give a little bit of a background on you and who you are and your story?
Sure. I'm currently, as you mentioned, the CFO of a hemp company. It's a startup based out of Oregon. I'm originally from Chicago, though, so I grew up in the suburbs. I live in the city now, and I spent about 10 years at large companies in the consumer packaged good world and did various, corporate finance and other sorts of roles there. And then a couple of years ago, I was looking to join a startup out of business school. I wanted to go small and help build a company. The timing lined up pretty well with some of the federal legalization of hemp, which had been outlawed since the 30s. And with the 2014 Farm Bill, and then with the 2018 Farm Bill sort of reinforcing some of the laws, this new market emerged. And things lined up for me, and I was able to join a company that was recently getting started and getting into the hemp and CBD world.
So tell me a little bit about your company so that everyone has an idea.
Our company's name is Amota Group, and we provide ag services for farmers in Southern Oregon. And then we provide follow-on processing and sales and distribution services for them or for our own product that we're producing. And then even diving into the retail side of the world, which we can get into a little bit more.
So one of the first things I want to ask you is talk a little bit about hemp, because automatically when people think of cannabis, they think of marijuana, they think of medical marijuana, recreational marijuana. But tell us a little bit about hemp and what that really means and what that industry is like.
Sure. Yeah, I think definitions are good here because it can get confusing.
Yeah.
So the plant itself is the cannabis plant. And depending on the level of THC, it has a different legal definition. So if the THC is below 0.3%, it is federally considered hemp and it's fully legal. You can buy it and sell it. You can cross state lines with it. You don't need a special license other than a nominal license within your state to do that. Marijuana, on the other hand, which is also called the cannabis industry. So if you say the cannabis industry, you probably mean marijuana, right, which has a higher level of THC in it. And that's what we know here in Chicago, big companies like Green Thumb, Cresco, and all those guys that are in that side of the industry. My side of the industry with hemp is focused more on the CBD, which is where the market demand is for people who get the benefits of anti-anxiety, anti-inflammation, help with sleep, and various other things that the CBD gives them.
Okay, so thanks for articulating that. You said it really well, the definitions and the differences. But so talk a little bit about being a CFO in this industry with hemp. Like, how is that? Because your background is bigger companies, completely different industries, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're in this wild, wild west type thing. But probably, in my opinion, the industry with the highest growth potential with everything that could potentially come out of it. So talk about being a CFO right now in hemp.
Yeah, it's as you said, the wild, wild west. There's been a lot of change, and that's change is, I guess, a constant in this industry. Even though the federal farm bills have legalized hemp, there's been no real follow-on rules and regulations that are due from the USDA and the FDA, and so everyone's sort of living in this limbo world. So there are challenges with that, but for the most part, the industry is moving forward, following a lot of common sense guidelines and some industry organizations that say, hey, let's all kind of do it this way that we think is right. And then hopefully these rules and regulations that are implemented are in line with that. For our company and for my job, what has been, the most interesting and challenging part of it has been making sense of the market and where is the demand and where are the sales going. And then on the supply side, how are we supplying those products in a cost-effective way? And if you talk to, I think even the big cannabis companies, controlling their costs with this plant is one of the biggest challenges because the plant is fickle at times. You grow this thing and then you harvest it and it's wet and you need to dry it. and then you need to process it down, removing the stems and the stalks and the leaves, trimming it, and making this this flour. If you're going for smokable, which is what our company focuses on, to make it a sellable form, there's a lot of loss along the way. And so tracking your yields and your labor and other cost inputs to be able to price it accurately, and so be able to do that profitably. And then on top of that, the seasonality of the market and pricing is dramatic. And so this time of year in the spring, we start seeing prices go up and demand go up. And then late summer, you'll see it all drop back down because everyone's anticipating the new harvest and the fresh batch of product that will be hitting the market in a couple months. And so people stop buying and demand goes down, price goes down.
How does, I guess, like, what, being a CFO here, like, what's the biggest difference that you're seeing in the industry versus, and I guess part of it is like, and I don't know the exact law behind it, but there's the tax law that says you can't claim a lot of those things as expenses, right? That a normal business is able to. So does that apply to you and with hemp, or is that more on the THC related side?
That's more on the THC and marijuana side. It doesn't affect us, thankfully. The rule, it's Rule 280E, and it is a tax law from the 80s that says if you are, if you're selling a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 controlled substance, then you cannot deduct your operating costs for tax purposes. So there was a famous case back then where somebody who was dealing drugs did so, and then they had to change the law so that you can't get away with that anymore. So it doesn't apply to us because very specifically the Farm Bill 2014 said hemp is not a controlled substance. It is not a Schedule 1 controlled substance. It is okay. Versus marijuana, which has THC in it, that is a Schedule 1 controlled substance in the United States.
Okay. And then one of the things that you talked about was like the cost associated with this, right? So you and I talked about the farming costs for smokable flower, and it was, I have it on my notes, $75 to $100 per finished pound. So yeah. How does that affect the business, that cost of that?
Yeah, so I would say when I break it down from the farm all the way to the consumer, the farmer is probably investing anywhere from $75 to $125 per finished marketable sellable pound. And that's including, their seeds and their labor to plant and to harvest and to take care of it, transportation. Okay. We're the next step in that chain usually, where we're acquiring the pound for maybe a margin above that for the farmer. And then we are, doing our work to it, to store it and sell it through our channels to get it to a wholesaler, usually a store or a website who might be selling it. And that market's probably depending on the quality of the product, and it's all strain dependent, things like that, $300 to $500 for the most part for hemp flower. And then on the retail end, when you break that pound down into retail ready sizes, which are usually 3.5 grams for easy reference,
for an eighth.
For an eighth, yeah, exactly.
At least what people called it back in the day.
If you know the lingo. And so if you extrapolate that pound across 120 to 130 units, it's $2,400 a pound at the retail level. So wow. From that whole chain, you've got the farmer capturing, let's say $150, capturing, depending 50 to 100, and then the wholesaler is capturing the remainder, or there sometimes could be another middleman in there, but that's the value chain of it.
What obviously cannabis is in my opinion, probably the hottest industry right now, and the one that has the biggest curiosity around. Now, there's a lot of people that want to get into cannabis, right? Especially people that are finance leaders, CFOs, whatever in other industries. So what advice do you have for people that want to get into cannabis?
Well, I'd say brushing up on all these details and the differences of it is a good place to start, and the rules and regulations. Right now, it's the legal side and the regulatory side that has the biggest near-term impact on the industry and where things will go. And so being well read there is probably the best place to start. I'm not on that cannabis side directly, but what I see from the hemp side is that right now we're all worried about, state by state legalization. We're talking about federal legalization happening, in the near future, depending on what might happen, and how that will affect the market. So, the incumbents are staking their claims to licenses in states and trying to build out their businesses that way. And so this is all a song and dance around laws and regulations. Then when that sort of the dust settles around all of that, I would see it's already becoming more of a consolidation game of there's a whole bunch of different players. Now they'll start to see who do we pair up well with and add value with together. And then from there it becomes, and it already is, it's all kind of happening together, but more of a traditional CPG business. And it's going to be about branding and quality of product and sales like that.
Got it. Okay, cool. I guess the last question I want to ask you about, and this is because you and I talked about this before. I've had several conversations with other people in cannabis and this got brought up, but what is Delta 8?
Delta 8 is a cannabinoid, and the cannabis plant produces over 100 cannabinoids naturally. We don't really know all of them yet. We only know a few and what they do and how they affect us and things like that. So the most famous is THC. The second would be CBD. And the third is Delta 8, which is Delta 8 THC. The first THC that we all know historically is Delta 9 THC.
And that's the one that shows up on drug tests, and that's what drug tests look for, okay?
Exactly. And it's one little branch of a molecule difference between them. They're both psychoactive. I believe the Delta 8 is probably a little less potent, maybe some other differences in how it affects people, but it is a psychoactive compound from the cannabis plant. It's not naturally grown in enough volume in the plant to actually extract it and get anything out of a plant. But in a lab, you can take CBD and convert it into Delta 8. That's what we're seeing now in a lot of the market. And the loophole there is hemp and its derivatives are legal under the Farm Bill. And if you extract CBD from hemp, CBD is a derivative of hemp, so it's legal. And then if you go convert CBD into Delta 8, it is still legal as a derivative of hemp.
See, I find that fascinating, like because the laws are so strict, but then, I mean, it's making it, there's a lot of social equity things that need to completely get fixed within this industry. But I think it's kind of hilarious that there's that loophole with this whole Delta 8 thing.
Kind of hilarious. That's a good way to put it. It's a moving target all the time for this industry. And so everyone's trying to keep up and, continue to run their business and, stay in business in some cases, because it can be quite challenging. I know there are some rules and regulations that will be coming, whether at state levels or even federally, to address the Delta 8 loophole, if you will. Yeah. And then that begs the question of the other 100+ compounds that we don't know of yet, or people haven't gotten to experimenting with. How will those be addressed? And will whatever legislation or rules that get implemented now be a catch-all for other future compounds, or will this just keep happening on a one-off basis? So we'll see.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm gonna post this obviously on LinkedIn and Instagram, but if people want to get in touch with you, because I feel like there's a lot of interest on this topic. Most of the people that will see this from the people that I send it to and whatnot, they're not really in cannabis. So I know just a lot of people want to learn more about it. Is the best way to get in touch with you, like on LinkedIn, or is there anything else that you prefer?
LinkedIn is a great way to do it. Yep. So I don't know if you're going to link to it or not, but
yeah, I'll link you to it. So so that people can see that. Thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. April is like I told myself, I'm just going to get really into this. I'm just going to learn about this industry and I am absolutely like amazed at some of the things that have happened and is going on right now. So thanks for all the information, education that you kind of give me. So
thank you, Benny. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Take care.
All right. Let's see. Stop.